Why hello there friends, I'm Emma the Bookish Princess. Today we're going to do a full bookshelf tour. If you watch my monthly reading vlogs, then you will have seen this space. You'll have seen me setting it up. I recently got a new place and it has been so much fun to design my bookshelf wall to figure out how I want to display my beautiful collection. I have done a bookshelf tour video in the past, so if you watched that one, a lot of these titles are going to be the same. I have made some new purchases, and I also have brought out a whole bunch of books from storage, a lot of old college favorites that I just never had the heart to get rid of and thought I might want to read again. Also a lot of childhood favorites. So yes, these shelves have a real mix of genres and ages. There are a lot of classics because I just absolutely love classics. And I love Jane Austen, so I do have my Jane Austen shelf and plenty of Jane Austen editions. The bookshelves themselves, in case you're curious, I found on Wayfair.com. The desk is from Souter. I think it was called the Cottage Road desk. I'll try to remember to link them down in the description. I definitely will not link all the books in the description because that would take way too long. I'll try to remember to link maybe some of my favorite series because the series do look so beautiful together. I have them kind of specially in the corner bookshelves. We are going to go through spine by spine, shelf by shelf. I'm going to show you all of them. Before we get started, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. I post brand new videos every single week. We would love to have you as part of the Bookish Kingdom. All right, let's get into it. So we're going to start up here on my Dorothy Sayers shelf. Here I have Strong Poison. Have His Carcass. These are the Lord Peter and Harriet Vane books. Gaudy Night, which is set at Oxford and is so magical, and then Busman's Honeymoon. I just love it when Lord Peter and Harriet Vane team up. But I do have a couple other ones that are just Lord Peter, The Unpleasantness at the Bologna Club, and then last but not least, Clouds of Witness. I think these Hotter Books editions are really cool. I love how both the front and the back are just so bright and colorful. I will probably grab some more of those at some point. So we're gonna bring the elevator down, down one floor. There we go. Here, as you can see, I have my Little House on the Prairie, a Laura Ingalls Wilder shelf. The first book in the series I actually don't have here. It was Little House in the Big Woods. And I love that one. I'm gonna have to look and find it. But we also have By the Shores of Silver Lake. I have On the Banks of Plum Creek. I have The Long Winter. I have Little Town on the Prairie. And then we have These Happy Golden Years. That's when she meets Almanzo Wilder, who she would marry. And she also wrote a book about Almanzo's childhood, Farmer Boy, which I love this one just as much as the ones about Laura's own family. On the end here, I do also have On the Way Home, a diary of a trip from South Dakota to Mansfield, Missouri. In one of my recent reading vlogs, I talked about, it's hidden back here, West from Home, Letters of Laura Ingalls Wilder from San Francisco at 1915. This was when she went to visit her daughter Rose, and she wrote back to Almanzo in Missouri. Here is my L.M. Montgomery shelf. These are the Virago Classics editions, and I love how you have a beautiful cover and a beautiful back cover. Anne of Green Gables, of course. Anne of Avonlea. She and Diana look so sweet there. These are such beautiful kind of seasonal covers. Anne of the Island and Anne of Windy Willows. This has another name. I know it, I just can't remember it right now. Anne's House of Dreams. Then we have Anne of Ingleside. Also Rainbow Valley. Also Rilla of Ingleside. This next one, Jane of Lantern Hill, is actually a standalone, but it is so charming. I love getting to know Jane. And then we have the Emily of New Moon series. There are 3 of these, Emily of New Moon. Emily Climbs, beautiful wintry cover there. and Emily's Quest. Yeah, the ones that have a cool cover and a cool back cover are so perfect for these rounded shelves, because it's like then you get to have a glimpse of the pretty back cover when they're fanned out. All right, we're moving along to the beautiful Elizabeth Goudge shelf. Elizabeth Goudge is one of my absolute favorite authors, so I definitely had to grab the Hotter Books editions of these. The Dean's Watch, definitely one of my favorites. I would say my top two Goudges are The Dean's Watch and A City of Bells, which we recently did a read-along for and a live stream. That was super fun. But we also have The White Witch. This is set during the English Civil War. Gentian Hill. I think this one was set during the Napoleonic Wars. The Castle on the Hill. This was set during World War II. Towers in the Mist. This is set in Elizabethan Oxford. I did a whole video talking about Elizabeth Goudge and like the best place to start. This is set in Scotland. So magical. Green Dolphin Country takes you to New Zealand, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, if you want to hear more about Elizabeth Goudge, though, I'll link that video up above. The Rosemary Tree, I actually haven't read it yet. I need to pick it up. The Desmaroshes trilogy is an absolute classic. This is one of them, The Herb of Grace, and I don't have the other two, so I'm keeping my eye online so that I can grab those. And then these are from Girls Gone By Publishing. So these are mostly her children's books. Smoky House, The Valley of Song, Sister of the Angels, and finally Henrietta's House. Henrietta's House and Sister of the Angels are actually, these are both sequels to A City of Bells. So that is pretty magical that we get to hear more of the wonderful City of Bells Torminster crew. And then last but not least, this is also published by Girls Gone By. This is The World of Elizabeth Goudge by Sylvia Gower. So it's kind of like a biography, but especially focusing on places Elizabeth Goudge visited and lived and how they are tied to the places she features in her novels. I'm just adding this back into my rainbow of wood houses because I've been reading it lately. Yes, I just love these Everyman wood houses are so fantastic. Beautiful hardcovers with awesome dust jackets. We have Meet Mr. Mulliner, possibly one of my favorite Woodhouse worlds. I just love Mulliner. Mulliner Nights, also excellent. But of course, Bertie and Jeeves are kind of the most classic and most famous Woodhouse. Very Good Jeeves. We have A Damsel in Distress. Smith. The P, of course, is silent. Smith is also right up there with Mulliner. I know, I like them even better than Bertie and Jeeves. Although, obviously, I love Bertie and Jeeves, too. And Blandings, of course. Full Moon. I have also done a video chatting about my Woodhouse collection. The Code of the Woosters. Here is Carry On Jeeves. I believe this is the first, technically the first one. It's a whole bunch of short stories, and one of the short stories, the first short story, Jeeves Takes Charge, is the first time that Jeeves and Bertie meet. So that's pretty awesome. Mr. Mulliner speaking. The Mating Season. This, I think, is my mom's favorite Woodhouse. Service with a Smile, classic, Lord Ickenham. Louder and Funnier. These are actually nonfiction essays and writings from Woodhouse. Leave It to Smith, so classic. Summer Lightning, this is the one that I've been reading lately. There's the Empress of Blandings on the cover. Thank You, Jeeves, the infamous Benjuolele. Smith in the City, another classic. Not George Washington. This he wrote with Herbert Westbrook. I haven't read it yet, but it seemed interesting. And last but not least, Smith Journalist. So I will go ahead and warn you right now, there's going to be a fair amount of American Girl on this shelf tour, even though I'm not like necessarily going to read them and reference them. It's fun to have them here. So these are the little short stories. Felicity's New Sister, Felicity Takes a Dare, Felicity's Dancing Shoes, and Felicity Discovers a Secret. Yeah, you'll notice the same set of 6 too. We have Josefina. These are all so cute. Thanks to Josefina. Josefina's Song, Just Josefina. There's Kaya and the River Girl. Kit's Home Run and Kit's Treehouse. I also have Kirsten, Kirsten's Promise, Kirsten the Chippewa, Kirsten the New Girl, and then some Samanthas. Aren't the covers just lovely? Samantha and the Missing Pearls, Samantha Saves the Wedding, Samantha's Winter Party. And then these were American Girl mysteries. Kaya mystery, Kit mystery, Felicity mystery. In the middle here are my J.R.R. Tolkiens. They're in this beautiful little Tolkien box, and the colors of these, they're kind of leather bound and soft, and they're really perfect for just popping in your bag. It is quite small print because obviously it's long books and they are in these compressed formats, but I don't really mind the small print. We're not really going in order here, are we? Down here I have Dorothy Wordsworth, an anthology. I bought this at Dove Cottage, which is where Dorothy lived with her brother, William Wordsworth. Here's King John, a little Shakespeare edition, and these are Washington Irving, Sketchbook and Tales of a Traveler, which oddly, I think I don't have the one with Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is of course one of Irving's most famous works. So I'm gonna need to get the other. I think it might be number 3. I have number 1 and 2. This is a children's book. I just think it's cute and fun. Little Master Tolstoy, Anna Karenina, a fashion primer. It's just beautiful to look at. It has fabulous, fabulous illustrations. Quiet Corners of Paris for when I'm feeling like some travel illustration. This just has lovely photos and everything. Library of Luminaries, Jane Austen, an illustrated biography illustrated by Nina Cosford. These are kind of fun. Factoids and pretty illustrations. Travel Guide to Neuschwanstein Castle. Gift from the Sea by Anne Morrow Lindbergh. The Liberty Coloring Book. This is so pretty. It has different Liberty patterns that you can color in for yourself. I wish now that I had bought more of the books in this series. I spotted them. Was it in Hatchards in London? But they had a whole row of them, and the series is called English Journeys. This one is Through England on a Side Saddle by Celia Fiennes, and she lived in like the 1500s or earlier. Oh, a little later, 17th century traveler. But this is her travelogue, and I'm pretty sure all the others in the series were also travelogues from the past. So maybe I'll have to scope out eBay or used bookstores to try to find some more of those. This was a used bookstore find, Marmion by Sir Walter Scott, which I bought because of Anne Elliot. This is just one of my little notebooks. It's a Kate Spade pattern, which is fun, where I've copied in some of my favorite quotes. The Virginian by Owen Wister. This is such a good adventure, Western tale. And then I also have here A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. This is a pretty Penguin Essentials cover. All right, on to another shelf. I feel like I need to stop talking about all these books and just get through it. Harper Lee, Ghost at a Watchman. Just Enough Jeeves. So this is a combination of different Jeeves stories by P.G. Wodehouse, of course. I also have Much Obliged Jeeves and Mulliner Nights. And also Enter Jeeves, 15 early stories. Down the Garden Path. I wish Beverly Nichols books were not so hard to find because they are absolutely wonderful. It's like a gardening book, but like with a sort of P.G. Wodehouse style humor. So good. The Blue Castle. This is a lovely standalone by Ellen Montgomery. Angela Thirkle. I love Angela Thirkle's world. Wild Strawberries. Most of my Angela Thirkles are ebooks, but it is fun to have the printed one because the covers are wonderful. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. Life of Pie by Jan Martel. Old Herbaceous. This is another excellent garden book by Reginald Arknell. The Vicar of Wakefield and the Deserted Village by Goldsmith. The Vicar of Wakefield is mentioned in Emma. The Bohemians by Ben Tarnoff. This is nonfiction. Mark Twain and the San Francisco writers who reinvented American literature. This was one of the books that really got me interested in Emily Dickinson, Ancestors' Brocades. The literary debut of Emily Dickinson by Millicent Todd Bingham. Live Alone and Like It by Marjorie Hillis. This was written in the 30s. It's kind of fun. Emily Dickinson's Envelope Poems. This has scans of the actual little envelope poems that she sketched out. Langston Hughes, Selected Poems. Samuel Coleridge. This is the Faber Nature Poet series. We have Wordsworth, Poems selected by Seamus Heaney. On the Map by Simon Garfield, a mind-expanding exploration of the way the world looks. This is nonfiction, really fun. Another nonfiction, so good, At the Existentialist Cafe, Freedom Being an Apricot Cocktails by Sarah Bakewell. This is so fun. I feel like this helped me appreciate the existentialists a lot more. Definitely brought them to life. P.G. Wodehouse, A Life in Letters, Margaret Forster, My Life in Houses, and finally, the complete poems of Emily Dickinson. This is more or less my children's favorites shelf, although Maud Hart Lovelace wrote both children's books and adult books about her characters, Betsy and Tacy. So this is the Betsy Tacy Treasury, which has kind of all the children's books from Betsy Tacy to Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown. And then we have Heaven to Betsy and Betsy in Spite of Herself, 2 of the high school books. Betsy Was a Junior and Betsy and Joe, 2 more of the high school books. Betsy in the Great World and Betsy's Wedding. Betsy in the Great World is probably the one I've reread the most often just because I love hearing about Betsy going abroad in the early 1900s. And then finally we have Emily of Deep Valley. Betsy and her crowd only make an appearance in this one. It's mostly about Emily, but it is so sweet. It's such a beautiful one. At some point I would like to get all of the Mary Poppins sequels, but at the moment I just have the original by P.L. Travers. These books are so much fun. They are sequels and prequels to the Little House on the Prairie series. So they're not by Laura Ingalls Wilder, but they are about her ancestors. So here are the Charlotte years. I think this was her grandmother. And then the Caroline years, that was her mother, of course. So other authors researched the lives of her ancestors and then wrote these awesome books. We also have her great-grandmother who lived in Scotland down to the Bonnie Glen, the Martha years. That's just so much fun. And then we do also have her daughter, the Rose years. And Rose actually was a writer in her own right. So someday I would like to look up Rose's actual works, but these are fun too. Little Town in the Ozarks and In the Land of the Big Red Apple. Speaking of historical children's fiction, I was always a huge fan of the American Girl dolls and American Girl doll books, and so I thought it'd be fun to have them out here. Felicity was probably my favorite. Even now, I just absolutely love the Revolutionary War, and I feel like Felicity is what started it all. There's all 6 Felicity books. I also have Samantha's books here. It was so fun the way they did this kind of setup for so long, where each doll got 6 books taking you through the seasons, taking you through different settings. The titles of these you can guess, so I'll just try to kind of lay them out quickly. Josefina, I love Josefina, her birthday outfit, and Sombrita the goat. Oh my goodness. Here is Kaya. I love Kaya's adventures as well. Steps High, that was her horse, I think. Kaya and the Lone Dog. Kaya Shows the Way. Changes for Kaya. Kit was the Depression era doll, and she was just so fabulous. I feel like she had so much personality, and even her name, Kit Kittredge. So fabulous. And then last but not least, I have Marie Grace and then Kirsten, the Swedish immigrant. I made saffron buns for St. Lucia's Day one time, inspired by Kirsten. On this shelf down at the end, I have these fun magazines. They're really sort of like coffee table books. They're called Lodestar Anthology. We have Japan, England, France, India, Switzerland, and also Portugal. So they're just full of really beautiful photos and some fun like travel articles. So it's just sort of like taking an armchair trip to Switzerland, and you learn some new things. I had no idea that like there is such a thing as competitive hot air ballooning. Yeah, these don't really fit with the rest of the books on this shelf. The rest is theology. A Prayer Journal by Flannery O'Connor. This is so good. It's pretty short, but really fun to read Flannery O'Connor's Prayer Journal. And then right next door to that, I have Flannery O'Connor's Complete Stories. Then we have some C.S. Lewis, The Great Divorce and the Screwtape Letters. A Short History of Myth by Karen Armstrong. Thomas Merton, No Man is an Island. These two are both by Father Walter Chiswick, He Leadeth Me and With God in Russia. The Renaissance Philosophy of Man, selected writings of Petrarch, Valla, Ficino, Pico, Pomponazzi, and Vive. St. Therese of Lisieux, Her Last Conversations. Some of the Summa, St. Thomas Aquinas, of course. My Bright Abyss by Christian Wyman. Here is Women and Christianity by Mary T. Malone. Some Dorothy Sayers, Letters to a Diminished Church. This is so, so good. These are like essays and lectures that Dorothy Sayers delivered about faith and theology. Rod Dreher, The Benedict Option. Bonaventure, The Journey of the Mind to God. Anselm's 3 Philosophical Dialogues. The Cosmic Revelation by B. Griffiths. The Way of Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I reread this last fall. It's so good. Some classics of Western spirituality. John of the Cross, Catherine of Siena, The Dialogue. This is good, but I think I love her letters, collected letters even more. You can find a free edition of those on Kindle. Julian of Norwich, Showings, Origin, and Teresa of Avila, Interior Castle. I love. So there are some books hiding behind here. I kind of didn't want to destroy my shelves too completely, but I guess I will fish them out. I need to find them a better home. I have some ideas. So the big one back there is Poetry in English, an anthology. This was my college poetry book. But then I also have some little books. This is Ave Constantin by Halave. It is just as charming on the inside as it is on the outside. A little edition of Jane Austen's letters. On Christian Contemplation, Thomas Merton. This is such a pretty edition of Longfellow, Voices of the Night. And then Goodbye, Mr. Chips by James Hinton. I also have hidden back here Johann Wyss, The Swiss Family Robinson, The Sherwood Ring. This I should have on the shelf proper because it's one of my favorites. Elizabeth Marie Pope is just such a fantastic author. She also wrote The Perilous Guard. This one's set in the American Revolution. The Perilous Guard is set in Elizabethan England, but both are just fantastic history novels with a touch of magic. And then I also have An Old-Fashioned Girl by Louisa May Alcott. So these are some children's and picture books and some more American Girl books. I loved these Welcome to Felicity's World, Welcome to Samantha's World, Welcome to Josefina's World. They were just really fun. They gave more historical context about the worlds of the dolls. I don't know where Welcome to Kaya's World is. I feel like I must have that one too. Jane Austen, An Illustrated Treasury. This is just kind of an eye candy book, and I think it has like some fun, like letters inside it that you can pull out and things like that. My Dear Cassandra, my brother found this for me at a used bookstore. They are excerpts from Jane Austen's letters, but then paired with some beautiful paintings. This is such a cool book, Jane Austen cover to cover. It has all of the covers of Jane Austen works through the years, and it's just so fascinating to see, Pride and Prejudice and Northanger Abbey and like what different covers people put out for Jane Austen. Such a variety. Mary Coulter, Builder Upon the Red Earth. I bought this book at the Grand Canyon, and that's where I first discovered Mary Coulter. She was an amazing designer and architect for the Harvey House hotels along the railroad. Here's my old dear friend, Osa Johnson, who I first encountered at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. This book, I Married Adventure, is part of the decor in the Sunset Lounge. But Martin and Osa were very real travelers and photographers and videographers in the 20s and 30s. They moved to Kenya for 4 years to get amazing wildlife photography. That's what 4 Years in Paradise is about. They learned to fly so they could get aerial footage. They were just so incredible. You guys have heard me mention the Martin and Osa Safari Museum in Chanute, Kansas, which was their hometown, and they very kindly sent me the new paperback, so it's fun that there's now a paperback, which still has the wonderful zebra stripes on the cover. One of their planes was zebra striped, which is what inspired the cover, which is pretty fabulous. This is a fun Jane Austen type book, Sorcery and Cecilia or the Enchanted Chocolate Pot. It has magic in it, which is pretty fabulous. She Who Believed. This was one of the Lenten journals that Blessed Is She put out a couple years ago. I have Emma's Journal by Marissa Moss. She did a bunch of those, oh, what were they called? Amelia? They were put out by American Girl. They were fun illustrated journals. And this one is also an illustrated journal, except set in colonial times. Here is the gorgeous Anna Bond edition of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, illustrated by Anna Bond of Rifle Paper Company. Gardens of Awe and Folly, a traveler's journal on the meaning of life and gardening. Vivian Swift is a really fun author. These are two beautiful books by her, author and painter, I should say, because all of her books are like kind of like scrapbooks. They're combined paintings with some reflections. This one is When Wanderers Cease to Roam, a traveler's journal of staying put. The New Cruel, you know, this was probably in my last bookshelf tour, and I still have not really sat down with it. A lot of the books on these lower shelves and that are tucked behind are books that I don't really consult, and I should probably just make a decision to keep them or get rid of them. But someday I would love to do Cruel, you know? An old college book, Space from Zeno to Einstein, classic readings with a contemporary commentary. The Picnic by Jane Pettigrew. This is, I think, as it says, just an homage to The Picnic, which is pretty great. These, I think, are all like travel books that I bought, you know, tourist guides when we were at various places like Edinburgh Castle, Clarendon Park, Oxford, Beatrix Potter's Hilltop, Fashion Museum Treasures. This I'm pretty sure was from Bath. Jane Austen's Homecoming, Chawton, and Montpesson House. I don't usually use coloring books, you know, like the adult coloring books, but if I ever feel inclined, I have this cute Secret New York coloring book. This is so pretty. Disney Fairies in the Realm of the Never Fairies. Just really beautiful illustrations and fun layouts. Like, I especially love the ones of like the fairy cities. Rachel Field's Hitty. This is such a good book, and this is such a fun edition of it because it's so beautifully illustrated. So her first 100 years, this doll is named Hitty, and she is around for 100 years, and this story tells like from the beginning, from when she was first created, and like all the different households and little girls who she ends up coming to, and it's just so, so sweet. And then some more Disney books at the end here. We have Frozen, A Sister More Like Me, illustrated by Brittany Lee, who does the Calendar Girl that I like. Here we have Mary Blair, Cinderella, just absolutely, completely magical, beautiful, classic illustrations. And then these two are The Art of Moana and The Art of Brave. So takes you behind the scenes and shows you all sorts of cool concept art and all that kind of thing. Really beautiful and really fun. All right, so as we travel from bookshelf to bookshelf, we're gonna take a quick tour of my desk. I absolutely love the Calendar Girl calendar from Etsy. It is so cute. The actual Calendar Girl stand is really hard to get. You have to like be completely on top of it when it releases. So I was only able to get the dresses with like the months and days. So I just made a quick little Calendar Girl of my own. I feel like the June dress kind of matches the Bowden dress that I'm wearing today and that I bought recently. But I do have the July girl here. So we can pop that in. Ready for summer? As you will have already gathered, I am an ARMY. Always gotta have a good BTS background and some RJ, and I've got all my Bangtan brothers right there. I have done a BTS shelf tour because I do have a bunch of their albums, but they are actually on another shelf. That's why there aren't the BTS albums on these shelves. Yes, behind my Calendar Girl, I have my beautiful hardcover Penguin English Library Jane Austen editions. I actually got this for like $70. It wasn't even that expensive. I mean, and when you consider there are 7 hardcover books in there, that is a pretty darn good price. I also have a cute little pot of pens, etc. there. And then my Animal Crossing Switch hiding over here. The lamp is from Kate Spade, and the desk, as I mentioned earlier, is Souter. The chair I found at Pier 1. It's very nice, very comfy. I do love the drawers on this desk because they are just so big. There's plenty of space. I built this desk myself. It seems to be holding up pretty well. I do like how the drawers slide too, although they're almost too big because it's easy for things to get lost in them. So above my desk, I have these fun prints from old Idlewild calendars. So they do a literary ladies calendar, and I've gotten it 2 years. So I have a really fun assortment of wonderful authors. I've read pretty much everyone on this list. I think the only two I haven't are, I've read excerpts from Uncle Tom's Cabin, but I haven't read the whole thing. And I actually just downloaded Tale of Genji on my Kindle, so I'm excited to check out Murasaki Shikibu. But I just love the aesthetic of these sketches and these wonderful authors. I haven't figured out exactly and precisely what I want to display on these little shelves. At the moment, I just have some Disney Lego sets. Look, aren't these adorable? These are like mini. Here's Belle and the Beast and the inside of the castle with some books on the floor there. And this actually folds up into a little book. Isn't that cute? So very appropriate. And then on the other side is Aurora's cottage. There's Maleficent out front. Look, I think, oh no, you turn the water wheel and that's what makes the smoke move. The fairies at the top, I think those are meant to be fairies. I wish this came with little mini fairy figurines. Sadly, it didn't. There's the inside of the cottage. The Lego Disney Princess sets are just amazing. All right. Back to the books. Here we have Benjamin Hoff, The Tao of Pooh. This is such a fun book. The Little Book of Huga, and also The Little Book of Laika. I absolutely loved these books growing up, and then I misplaced them for the longest time, and I just found them again. So I definitely need to reread them. They're by Lorna Hill. They're about a ballet dancing family, and the family lives in the Dancing Peel, which is a Scottish castle. So you have Dancing Peel, Dancer in the Wings, Dancer's Luck, and The Little Dancer, and they are so charming. I have my Puffin in Blooms up here, A Little Princess, Frances Hodgson Burnett, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, Heidi by Johanna Spree, and Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. These are, of course, just the covers, not the inside. Well, actually, it's the cover and the end papers, but not the illustrations. But some of these do have, I think, their original illustrations, which is fun. But the cover and end papers are done by Anna Bond of Rifle Paper Company. Here are my Penguin Read Read editions of Jane Austen, which I absolutely love. Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, Persuasion, Sense and Sensibility, and Northanger Abbey. These covers are just so lovely. And then I have Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead. I need to break this in and read it. Oddly, I have read Atlas Shrugged and, oh, what's the short one? I can't remember its name. I'll put it on the screen here. It's just funny that the only Anne on my shelf is one that I haven't read yet. And then this I liked so much. Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Myths and Stories with a Wild Woman Archetype. So the left-hand corner of this shelf just has some of my various notebooks. This is my quote journal. Oh, don't do that. But yes, I've shown this in some of my videos before. This is where I've done my Jane Austen character maps. I just have one last Austen character map, Mansfield Park, so I'm going to be doing that soon, and then just some other pretty little notebooks. I can never resist a pretty notebook. I have notebooks for everything. I don't need notebooks for everything, but I just like to have them. This is a fun Animal Crossing day planner that my brother got me for Christmas. Okay, and then we move into Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This is Jane Austen and magic and beautifully written. So creative, kind of dark at times, kind of strange, but highly recommended. I really loved that. Agatha Christie, After the Funeral, Murder in Mesopotamia. These covers are so great. Mystery of the Blue Train, Poirot. All three Poirots. I just love Poirot. And then 3 Marilyn Robinsons, the Gilead trilogy. Gilead, Home, and Lila. The Awakening of Miss Prim by Natalia Saint-Martin-Fenolera. I really liked this one. I feel like I need to reread this at some point. This is a pretty book I found at a antique store, A Spinner in the Sun by Myrtle Reed. I really enjoyed it. She wrote Arsenic and Old Lace. White Orchids. I've read many of Grace Livingston Hill's novels, and they're really enjoyable. They're like Christian romances set in the 30s. Some Mary Stewart. I have Thorny Hold, Wildfire at Midnight, Rose Cottage, and then I've already told you guys about this disappointment. Book Depository sent me a different cover. This was not the cover on their listing, and I was hoping to get the like travel poster cover, but what are you gonna do? So we'll be coming to my full Persephone classics on the next bookshelf, but here I have a Persephone book, The Making of a Marchioness by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I think I like this even better than The Shuttle, which is on the other shelf. This, especially the first half of it, is just sheer delight. The second half gets a little bit dramatic and tense, but still good. On the next shelf, you'll see I have another copy of The Scarlet Pimpernel, but this is just a fun used one. The Beloved Vagabond by William Locke. This is referenced in Betsy and the Great World, but it's also just such a great book, especially if you like travel. Here's a used copy of Evelina by Fanny Burney and a used copy of Captain Blood by Raphael Sabatini. Oh! I have not yet returned Thoreau to his spot here amidst the critical Norton editions. I was recently rereading Walden, which was super fun. We also have here Blake's Poetry and Designs, War and Peace, Moby Dick, The Prince by Machiavelli, Utopia, Sir Thomas More, and Paradise Lost by Milton. Yeah, this is kind of a classics shelf, so Don Quixote by Cervantes. A couple vintage classics here, Sabatini. I love him so much. Scaramouche and the Seahawk. We have Yeats' collected poems, and also Oscar Wilde, The Importance of Being Earnest, and other plays. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This is the 125th anniversary edition. Gotta have some Mark Twain. Demons by Dostoevsky. I also have Notes from Underground. These are both the Pevere and Volokonsky translations. I also have this, A Gentle Creature and Other Stories. I think I bought this because I was looking for a copy of The Dream of a Ridiculous Man. That's a really good one. But I also have some other Oxford World classics here, Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy and The Two Noble Kinsmen, Oxford Shakespeare. And then on the end, Edith Wharton, 3 novels of New York. So this is House of Mirth, Custom of the Country, and The Age of Innocence. And then I also have 3 novels of the Bronte sisters. This is Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, and Agnes Grey. We have a wonderful Jane Austen shelf here. I wonder if they'll ever do more of these illustrated editions. This is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, illustrated by Alice Patillo, and it's just really fun. Lots of really, really beautiful pages, and I feel like whenever I flip it open, it doesn't flip to an illustrated page, but there are lots of illustrated pages, which is really fun. These 3 are 3 of my favorites. Jane Austen, volume the 1st, volume the 2nd, and volume the 3rd. These are her juvenilia, which I had other editions. In fact, do I have another one here on this shelf? Catherine and Other Writings. This is an Oxford Classics edition. So the juvenilia, you've probably heard of, like Love and Friendship. When Jane Austen was a teenager, she wrote all these stories. She wrote a farcical history of England, of like all the kings and queens, and you often will find them kind of divided up, partial editions that just have some of them. But for the longest time, I could not figure out where they came from, like what was the original source, how to get a complete edition of them. And then I think my mom actually found these and got one of them as a birthday present. And then of course I got the other 2. These are scans of notebooks that Jane Austen herself copied out of the stories. So this is like the original manuscript of Juvenilia, scans of it. The originals are in the Bodleian Library, and you do have the scans here, but then at the end it is also printed. So I think these are just such absolutely fantastic books. Definitely a must for any Jane Austen fan's library in her own hand. And then I have some other assorted books about Jane Austen or sort of knockoffs of Jane Austen. If you've watched my Jane Austen book videos before, then you may have heard me mention them before, but here they are again. Faye Weldon, Letters to Alice on First Reading Jane Austen. This is a really fun one, in spite of its Victorian cover. And you know how I feel about Victorian covers on Jane Austen works, because Jane Austen was in the Regency period, not the Victorian period. Here's Tea with Jane Austen, recipes inspired by her novels and letters. A Jane Austen devotional. This is really nice. It pairs a quote from Jane Austen with some Bible verses and just a reflection. Jane Austen herself, her faith was very important to her. So I feel like she would like that. The Jane Austen Treasury, a delightful collection of insights into her lifetimes and novels. What Matters in Jane Austen, 20 Crucial Puzzles Solved by John Mullen. This is so good. I feel like he just makes so many good points. And like half of the book is just quotes from Jane Austen, which you know they're doing it right when they are quoting extensively and not just extrapolating. This is another excellent Jane Austen book, Jane Austen's England by Karen Quint. This is such a comprehensive guide to houses in England that Jane Austen herself would have visited and locations where she lived, but also the locations that were used in the movies and also locations that are featured in her books. So just very complete and impressive and awesome. Shannon Hale, Austenland. This is one of my favorite Austen knockoffs. It just gives me a kick. Jane Austen's Letters, collected and edited by Deirdre LaFay, the 4th edition. So this is like the complete letters with the most complete notes. I don't really have a favorite Austen biography, but this is one that I enjoyed. Jane Austen by Elizabeth Jenkins. This was the first copy of Pride and Prejudice that I ever read. As you can see, it's taped up, but I can't bear to get rid of it. It's just so fun. I also have this edition, The Complete Novels of Jane Austen, which is literally falling apart, although it's broken mostly into Mansfield Park or Emma. Like, it's mostly broken into the novels. Yes, very well loved. Jane Austen's Guide to Good Manners. So You Think You Know Jane Austen by John Sutherland and Deirdre LaFay. Maria Edgeworth's Belinda. Jane Austen loved Maria Edgeworth. And I've read, I think, 2 of Maria Edgeworth's novels, but I definitely need to read more. And then at the far end here, we have 2 annotated editions. Jane Austen's Emma and also Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Emma is edited by Bharat Tandon. Pride and Prejudice is edited by Patricia Spax. I didn't love these annotations. I didn't think they were the best. Emma, I liked those annotations better. But the main reason I like these is because there's so much space in the margin that I can add my own annotations. So when I read it, I can just make some notes about my thoughts. And then it's fun when I go back and read it a second time to see what I thought the last time. And they do have lots of fun photos and things in there to give you context to different things in the stories. So yes. Okay, so this is a lot of nonfiction and philosophy, a lot of old college books. We'll just go through them kind of quickly. Joseph Alber's Interaction of Color. 4 texts on Socrates, Plato, and Aristophanes. The Republic of Plato, edited by Alan Bloom. Here is the Odyssey and the Iliad by Homer. These are the translations by Robert Fitzgerald. The Federalist, the Gideon edition, edited by George Carey and James McClellan. By, of course, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. Hamilton wrote the other, how many was it? Plato's Theaetetus, Aeschylus the Orestia, Virgil's Aeneid. The Book of the Duchess by Geoffrey Chaucer. This is a neat one because it has the Old English on one side and then the Modern English on the other. Philosophical Works of Descartes. Samson Agonistes and Shorter Poems by Milton. The Theban Plays by Sophocles. Lucretius, The Way Things Are. Basic Works of Aristotle. Goethe's Faust. I haven't read this yet, but I'd really like to. The Origins of History and Consciousness by Eric Newman. He was a student of Jung. What is Called Thinking by Martin Heidegger. Hans Ur von Balthasar, Elucidations. First Generations, Women in Colonial America by Carol Birkin. Plato's Phaedrus, Plato's Meno. Oh, this doesn't have a cover. Martin Buber, I and Thou. I remember loving this one. I don't know how many shoes got in there. I should reread this sometime. This one I like to dip into occasionally because I absolutely love Montaigne in college. The Complete Essays of Montaigne. Locating Irish Folklore, Tradition, Modernity, and Identity by Dermot O'Gillane. I think that's how you say his last name. And then, as you can see, these bottom shelves especially are so wide that I do kind of hide some books back behind it. I have another copy of Towers in the Mist. Here's my The Child from the Sea by Elizabeth Goudge, which is a beautiful book, kind of a heavy one, but I'm not really a fan of that cover. The Joy of the Snow, this is Elizabeth Goudge's autobiography. Hey, I was actually looking for this. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's Counsel in Time of War. Since I just finished, Walden Thoreau quotes Confucius and the Bhagavad Gita quite a bit, so I'm tempted to reread that. Elizabeth Goudge's Scent of Water. This is such a beautiful one. This is probably in my top 3 Goudges, along with City of Bells and The Dean's Watch. Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. I have another copy of Farmer Boy. On the Cosmic Mystery of Jesus Christ by St. Maximus the Confessor. The Plays of Euripides. René Descartes, Discourse on Method and Meditations on First Philosophy. Plato's Timaeus. Don Giovanni by Mozart. Flatland by Edwin Abbott. This is such a cool, it's like a math novel, but like such a good math novel. I would highly recommend that one. Francis Bacon, Selected Philosophical Works. Epictetus, the Handbook. Euclid's Elements, because why not have Euclid's Elements on your bookshelf? Oh, now I'm going to have to fit these all back in. This is just a cute little book, Striped Pears and Polka Dots, The Art of Being Happy by Kirsten Sevig. It's just a really, kind of eye candy book. Lots of really pretty illustrations and like some recipes and fun stories and such. Evil and Law, Vile Bodies. And then the last books we have here are my old Dorothy Sayers editions, which I don't really know what to do with because I bought the new Hodder books because they're so beautiful. So now I have 2 copies. These are my Everyman Pocket Poet series. I just think they're so fabulous. This was how I fell in love with Emily Dickinson. I never really got her poems, and then I read her letters, and that made me fall in love. And I feel like I really understood her poems a lot better after reading the letters. Here's Poems of Rome, beautiful back and front covers. Walt Whitman, Robert Frost. The Four Seasons, this one is fabulous because it has, if you just are looking for a spring poem or a fall poem or a winter poem. And then last but not least, Gerard Manley Hopkins. The spines of these are so cool with like the different patterns. When my dad saw that I had bought the sequels of Dune, he was like, "You spent money on that?" The sequels of Dune have very divided feelings in my family. My brothers love them, and the covers are so great. I thought I would just buy these paperbacks. Here's Chapter House Dune. I'm going in reverse order. These are the end of the series. Heretics of Dune. God Emperor of Dune. The only problem is, of course, by reading them, I bent the spine. It's really hard not to bend the spine with these mass market paperback sizes. But at least I still have the beautiful covers intact. Children of Dune, Dune Messiah, and the original. Everyone in my family loves the original. Dune by Frank Herbert. If you only read one, just read the original. But if you feel inclined, you could dive into all the rest. So Jane Austen and Virginia Woolf share space on my vintage classics shelf. I do love this style though, and I love how the inside cover matches like another book in the series. So here's Northanger Abbey, Emma, Sense and Sensibility, Persuasion, there's that contrasting inside end paper, Mansfield Park, and Pride and Prejudice. And then on the Virginia Woolf side, we have Mrs. Dalloway. There's that end paper. Orlando. To the Lighthouse. I'd say my favorite is either To the Lighthouse or Mrs. Dalloway. A Room of One's Own, The Waves, and The Years. Here I've got some Penguin classics sharing space with my Persephone books. In terms of Penguin classics, I have St. Augustine's City of God. I also have St. Augustine's Confessions. Here's Pascal's Pensées. This is on my list to reread this year, actually. Jane Austen, Lady Susan, the Watsons, and Sanditon. I have Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. Herodotus, The Histories. Chaucer, The Canterbury Tales. Flaubert, Madame Bovary. And Dorothy Parker's Complete Stories. And then on the end, we have A Writer's Diary, which is Virginia Woolf. Of course, the end papers of these are so lovely. I've been meaning to reread that as well. This I found at a used bookstore, Reuben Sachs by Amy Levy. Miss Bunkle's book by D. Stevenson. This is an old favorite. I adore the Miss Bunkle book series. And then Frances Hodgson Burnett, the Shuttle. So our last shelf is certainly not least. It brings us to our Penguin English Library paperbacks. I just love the way these look, all lined up. The stripes and the multicolors are so fabulous. And it's so great that you can get so many classic titles. And then, you know, even though they're different authors, they all look so beautiful together. So these are not really in any particular order. They're mostly in color order, a pleasing color order. But here we have Silas Marner by George Eliot. That's so good. We have some Elizabeth Gaskell, North and South. Charles Dickens. Here's Oliver Twist. E.M. Forster, Howard's End. I love this E.M. Forster. So good. Here's a classic, J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Middlemarch by George Eliot. This is such a beautiful cover. F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. Baroness Orczy, The Scarlet Pimpernel. Oh, this is such a good book. If you've never read this one, I would highly recommend it. Such a great adventure. Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. I love that beautiful green and leafy cover. Got some Arthur Conan Doyle, The Adventure of the Six Napoleons and Other Cases. More Elizabeth Gaskell. Here is Wives and Daughters, very appropriate. Some bugs on the cover. Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. He had quite a middle name, didn't he? Elizabeth von Arnim, Elizabeth and Her German Garden. I love this book. It's so short, but so good. More Sherlock. The Five Orange Pips and Other Cases. Here's Wilkie Collins, The Woman in White. George Orwell, 1984. Rudyard Kipling, Kim. Frances Burney, Evelina. Jack London, The Call of the Wild. Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. John Buchan, 39 Steps. Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray. And finally, Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the bookshelf tour. Like I mentioned, I do post new videos every week with lots of reading vlogs and bookish videos. I do have a whole playlist of bookish videos, so I'll make sure I link it up above. Leave me a comment down below telling me about your bookshelf setup. What are some books you're planning to buy or that you're happy to have in your collection? As always, I hope you guys have a magical and a bookish day. Bye.